Have you ever wondered how one man changed professional wrestling forever without looking like the perfect hero? He wasn't the biggest athlete, he wasn't the most colourful entertainer, he didn't follow the rules, and he certainly didn't care about making everyone happy. Yet somehow, millions of fans around the world connected with him more than any other superstar of his generation. This is the untold story of the man who turned rebellion into a legacy, the legend known as Stone Cold Steve Austin. Welcome back to Ring Insights, where we uncover the stories behind wrestling's greatest legends, unforgettable moments, and the real events that shaped sports entertainment history. If you enjoy deep dives into the biggest names in wrestling, make sure you stay with us until the end, because today's story is filled with struggles, setbacks, controversy, and one of the greatest comebacks ever witnessed inside a wrestling ring. Long before the glass shattered and arenas exploded with cheers, Steve Austin lived a life that looked nothing like superstardom. Born Stephen James Anderson on December 18, 1964, in Austin, Texas, his childhood wasn't glamorous. After his parents separated, he was adopted by his stepfather, Ken Williams, and eventually took the last name Williams. Growing up wasn't always easy, but sports became an escape. Football, baseball, and track helped him develop the competitive mindset that would define his future. Professional wrestling wasn't originally the dream. Like many young athletes, Steve hoped sports would open bigger opportunities. He attended college on a football scholarship, but injuries and changing circumstances forced him to rethink his future. He worked regular jobs, including loading freight at a warehouse, trying to figure out where life would take him. Everything changed when he discovered wrestling schools in Texas. Inspired by the larger-than-life personalities he watched on television, Steve decided to gamble on an uncertain career. He enrolled under legendary trainer Chris Adams, where he quickly realized wrestling was far more demanding than it appeared. Every bump hurt, every mistake was punished, every lesson required discipline. Training wasn't glamorous. There were no luxury facilities or guaranteed contracts. New wrestlers traveled hundreds of miles for tiny paydays, often wrestling in front of only a few dozen fans. Some nights they barely earned enough money to pay for gasoline to reach the next town. Steve learned quickly that talent alone wasn't enough. Survival required toughness. His early career took place in small promotions throughout Texas, where fans slowly began noticing his intensity. While other wrestlers relied on colourful costumes and flashy entrances, Steve focused on believable aggression. Every match looked like a fight instead of a performance. Promoters appreciated his professionalism, even if he wasn't yet attracting national attention. Eventually, World Championship Wrestling noticed his potential. Joining WCW was a major opportunity. It offered national television exposure and the chance to compete against established stars. Steve adopted the name Stunning Steve Austin, portraying an arrogant young athlete with incredible confidence. Technically, he was among the company's best performers. Despite delivering excellent matches, management never viewed him as the future face of the company. While larger personalities received headline opportunities, Steve often found himself stuck in the middle of the card. Week after week, he proved his ability inside the ring, but the promotions rarely invested in building him as a top attraction. Still, his partnership with Brian Pillman created one of wrestling's most entertaining tag teams. Known as the Hollywood Blondes, they blended athletic ability with charisma and humour. Fans appreciated their chemistry, and many believed they deserved a much longer run together. Unfortunately, injuries and creative decisions ended the partnership sooner than expected. Behind the scenes, frustration continued to build. Steve believed he could become one of wrestling's biggest stars if given the chance. Instead, he watched opportunities pass him by while others received the spotlight. It wasn't simply about ego. He genuinely believed he could draw money for the company if management trusted him. Then came one of the most shocking moments of his career. WCW unexpectedly released Steve Austin in 1995 while he was recovering from an injury. From a business standpoint, executives viewed him as expendable. Few imagined that decision would become one of the greatest mistakes in wrestling history. For Steve, the release felt devastating. He had a family to support, bills to pay, and suddenly no guaranteed income. Many wrestlers never recovered after losing a major contract. Some quietly retired. Others disappeared into independent promotions, never returning to national television. Steve refused to accept defeat. He briefly joined ECW, a smaller but rapidly growing wrestling promotion known for its extreme style and creative freedom. Although his time there lasted only a few months, it transformed his career forever. For the first time, Steve was allowed to speak openly. His interviews became brutally honest, sarcastic, and deeply personal. Instead of reading scripted lines, he delivered passionate promos filled with frustration toward the wrestling industry. Fans immediately connected with his authenticity. He wasn't pretending to be someone else anymore. Paul Heyman recognized something others had overlooked. Steve wasn't failing because he lacked talent. He was failing because nobody had allowed him to become himself. Those unforgettable ECW promos eventually caught the attention of WWE executives. The company offered him a contract, although expectations remained modest. At first, creative plans struggled to find the right direction. Steve briefly wrestled under the nickname The Ringmaster, managed by Ted DiBiase. While technically impressive, the character lacked personality and failed to excite audiences. It became obvious that something needed to change. Steve himself realized the gimmick wasn't working. Instead of waiting for management to solve the problem, he started brainstorming ideas. He wanted a character that reflected his real personality, someone tough, fearless, unpredictable, and completely uninterested in pleasing authority. One phone call changed everything. While discussing possible names, Steve rejected several ridiculous suggestions before finally settling on Stone Cold. The phrase instantly matched his personality. Cold-hearted, emotionless under pressure, dangerous when challenged. Now all he needed was the right opportunity. That opportunity arrived during the 1996 King of the Ring tournament. Few people expected Steve Austin to win the event. Even fewer expected what happened afterward. Standing in the ring with the tournament crown on his head, Austin grabbed a microphone and delivered words that would echo throughout wrestling history. He mocked his opponents, dismissed critics, and turned his attention toward Jake Roberts, who had openly discussed his religious faith during the tournament. Austin famously declared that people could quote scriptures all they wanted, but Austin 3:16 says, "I just whipped your ass." The arena erupted. Nobody could have predicted that one unscripted feeling line would become one of the most successful catchphrases in sports entertainment history. T-shirts bearing the words Austin 3:16 began selling at astonishing rates. Fans repeated the phrase everywhere, from schools and workplaces to sporting events across America. More importantly, audiences had finally discovered the real Steve Austin. He wasn't trying to be a traditional hero. He wasn't asking for cheers. He simply refused to back down from anyone. And fans absolutely loved it. That single promo marked the beginning of a revolution that would soon transform not only Steve Austin's career, but the entire wrestling industry. What nobody realized at the time was that the biggest battles of his life were still waiting ahead. His rise had only just begun, and the rebellious anti-hero known as Stone Cold was about to collide with the most powerful authority figure wrestling had ever seen, creating a rivalry that would change WWE forever. As Stone Cold Steve Austin's popularity continued to grow, WWE itself was fighting for survival. The company was locked in a fierce ratings war with WCW, and for nearly 2 years, WCW had dominated Monday nights. Many fans believed WWE's best days were over. Some even predicted the company would eventually collapse. But history was about to take a dramatic turn. The audience was changing. Fans no longer wanted superheroes who always smiled and followed every rule. They wanted characters who felt real, unpredictable, and willing to challenge authority. Steve Austin fit that role perfectly. Then WWE introduced the one man who would become the perfect enemy for Stone Cold, company owner Vince McMahon. At first, Mr. McMahon wasn't portrayed as the villainous boss fans would come to know, but as Austin ignored company rules, attacked officials, and refused to respect management, McMahon slowly transformed into the arrogant corporate executive, determined to control every aspect of his company. The rivalry couldn't have been more perfect. On one side stood the billionaire boss who demanded obedience. On the other stood a blue-collar rebel who answered to no one. Millions of viewers instantly saw themselves in Austin, whether they worked in offices, factories, construction sites, or restaurants. Many people had experienced difficult bosses. Watching Stone Cold insult, embarrass, and physically attack the man in charge became incredibly satisfying. Every week seemed to raise the stakes. Austin interrupted meetings. He destroyed expensive property. He ignored suspensions. He invaded the ring whenever he wanted. Every punishment only made him more popular. Then came one of the most unforgettable moments in wrestling history. Driving a massive Zamboni machine directly into the arena, Austin smashed through security and headed straight toward Vince McMahon. Fans erupted as commentators screamed in disbelief. It wasn't just entertaining, it perfectly represented Stone Cold's character. Rules simply didn't apply to him. Not long afterward, Austin drove a beer truck into the arena during another confrontation with McMahon and the corporation. As thousands watched in shock, Austin climbed onto the truck, grabbed the hose, and sprayed Vince McMahon, Shane McMahon, and everyone standing beside them with thousands of gallons of beer. The image instantly became legendary. Even today, it remains one of the most replayed moments in WWE history. Every week seemed impossible to top, yet somehow Austin always found another way. Meanwhile, inside the ring, he continued proving he wasn't just an incredible entertainer. His matches against Bret Hart changed the perception of storytelling in professional wrestling. Their submission match at WrestleMania 13 is still considered one of the greatest matches ever performed. Austin entered as the villain. He left as the hero. Covered in blood after refusing to surrender to Bret Hart's sharpshooter, Austin passed out from pain rather than submit. The visual became iconic. Fans admired his toughness more than ever before. Without saying a word, Stone Cold had completed one of wrestling's greatest character transformations. Not long afterward, Bret Hart shocked audiences by embracing the villain role himself, while Austin officially became WWE's biggest anti-hero. The timing couldn't have been better. The Attitude Era had arrived. Everything about WWE became louder, edgier, and more unpredictable. Stone Cold stood right at the center of it all. Merchandise sales exploded. Austin 316 shirts appeared everywhere. Children wore them. Adults wore them. Celebrities wore them. Even people who rarely watched wrestling recognized the phrase. It became far more than wrestling merchandise. It became part of pop culture. Inside arenas, the atmosphere whenever Austin appeared was unlike anything fans had witnessed before. The sound of shattered glass echoed through the speakers. Before Austin even walked onto the stage, thousands of fans jumped to their feet. The roar was deafening. People knew chaos was about to follow. No matter who stood inside the ring, everyone suddenly looked nervous. Austin never needed lengthy introductions. The glass breaking was enough. Another key ingredient behind Austin's success was his chemistry with nearly every major superstar. His rivalry with The Rock became one of the greatest in wrestling history. Although their personalities couldn't have been more different, they complemented each other perfectly. The Rock relied on charisma, humor, and unforgettable catchphrases. Austin relied on intensity, aggression, and brutal honesty. Whenever they shared the microphone, audiences knew something memorable would happen. Their WrestleMania matches became massive attractions. Each encounter felt larger than the previous one. Neither man truly overshadowed the other. Instead, they elevated each other's careers while helping WWE reach unprecedented popularity. Austin also created unforgettable rivalries with Triple H, The Undertaker, Kane, Mankind, Kurt Angle, and countless others. Each feud revealed another layer of his personality. Sometimes he was funny, sometimes he was ruthless, sometimes he was completely unpredictable. Fans never knew what would happen next. Behind the scenes, however, life wasn't nearly as exciting. Years of wrestling had taken a tremendous physical toll. Steve Austin constantly worked through injuries. His knees required surgeries, his back caused daily pain. Minor injuries that would sideline ordinary athletes became routine. Still, he rarely slowed down. Then disaster struck. At SummerSlam 1997, during a match against Owen Hart, one simple mistake nearly ended everything. A pile driver went horribly wrong. Austin landed directly on his head. For several terrifying moments, he couldn't move. Millions watching around the world had no idea how serious the situation truly was. Despite suffering a severe neck injury, Austin somehow managed to finish the match. It became one of the toughest performances of his career. The injury changed his life forever. Doctors warned that continued wrestling carried enormous risks. Every future match became a careful balancing act between entertaining fans and protecting his health. Remarkably, Austin continued performing at an elite level. Few fans realized just how much pain he endured every single week. Painkillers became common, rehabilitation became routine, travel never stopped. Television appearances continued, championship matches continued. The audience saw only the fearless rebel. Behind the curtain, Steve Austin fought battles few people fully understood. As WWE entered its hottest period, Stone Cold became the face of the company. Television ratings skyrocketed. Pay-per-view events broke records. Arena attendance reached incredible heights. The company that once struggled to compete had now overtaken WCW. Many wrestling historians believe no single performer contributed more to that turnaround than Stone Cold Steve Austin. His rivalry with Vince McMahon became the driving force behind WWE's incredible success during the late 1990s. Fans didn't just watch matches. They tuned in every week wondering how Austin would humiliate his boss next. Sometimes it involved beer, sometimes vehicles, sometimes stolen championship belts, sometimes outright destruction. Whatever happened, viewers couldn't look away. Yet with fame came pressure. Every appearance carried enormous expectations. Every promo needed to be memorable. Every match needed to deliver. Steve Austin had become more than a wrestler. He had become the symbol of an entire era. But success often comes with difficult choices. As the new millennium arrived, injuries continued piling up. The same fearless style that built his legacy was slowly breaking down his body. And before long, Stone Cold Steve Austin would face the hardest decision of his entire career, a decision that would shock millions of fans and forever change the future of WWE. As the calendar turned to the new millennium, Stone Cold Steve Austin remained the biggest attraction in professional wrestling. Every time the familiar sound of shattered glass echoed through an arena, thousands of fans leapt to their feet before he even appeared on the entrance ramp. Few performers in any era had ever commanded that kind of reaction. But behind the scenes, Steve Austin knew something the fans didn't. His body was reaching its limit. The neck injury he had suffered years earlier continued to affect every aspect of his career. Simple movements caused pain. Long flights became exhausting. Training sessions were more difficult than ever before. Every match carried the possibility that one wrong landing could permanently damage his spine. Still, Austin refused to let fans see weakness. He continued competing in high-profile matches while undergoing surgeries and rehabilitation. It wasn't about proving how tough he was anymore. It was about honouring the audience that had supported him throughout his journey. Then came one of the most controversial nights in WWE history. At WrestleMania X7, Stone Cold Steve Austin challenged The Rock for the WWE Championship in the main event. The match lived up to every expectation. It was physical, emotional, and unpredictable. Fans believed they were watching two legends at the peak of their careers. But the ending changed everything. Desperate to regain the championship, Austin accepted help from his greatest enemy, Vince McMahon. Together they attacked The Rock until Austin finally secured the victory. The arena fell into stunned silence. For years, fans had embraced Stone Cold because he stood against authority. Seeing him join forces with the very man he had spent years fighting felt almost unbelievable. Many wrestling fans still debate that decision today. Some appreciate the risk WWE took by changing its biggest star. Others believe turning Austin into a villain was a mistake because audiences simply refused to hate him. Even when he acted as the bad guy, many fans continued cheering him. It demonstrated something incredibly rare. Stone Cold Steve Austin had become larger than traditional wrestling storytelling. People weren't supporting a hero or a villain anymore. They were supporting Steve Austin himself. Eventually, WWE returned him to the rebellious character audiences loved most. Unfortunately, injuries continued getting worse. His knees required constant attention. His neck remained fragile. His body had absorbed years of punishment. Doctors became increasingly concerned that continuing a full-time wrestling schedule could lead to permanent consequences. Then another unexpected moment changed his career. In 2002, Austin briefly walked away from WWE following disagreements over creative direction. Reports of his departure spread quickly across wrestling media, leaving fans shocked and wondering whether they had already seen his final appearance. Although he eventually returned, the incident revealed the pressure and frustration that often existed behind the scenes. Professional wrestling isn't simply about performing in front of a crowd. It also involves demanding travel schedules, constant physical pain, television obligations, and creative decisions that don't always satisfy everyone involved. Steve Austin had carried the company through its most successful years. Eventually, that responsibility became incredibly heavy. In early 2003, doctors delivered difficult news. His neck condition had reached a point where continuing to wrestle regularly was simply too dangerous. Austin faced a heartbreaking decision: keep wrestling and risk permanent injury, or step away while he still could. For someone whose identity had been built inside the ring, retirement wasn't just the end of a career. It felt like losing a part of himself. His final official WWE match came at WrestleMania 19 against The Rock. Unlike many retirement matches, there were no grand announcements beforehand. Most fans didn't realize they were witnessing Stone Cold's final, competitive performance until after it was over. The match itself told a powerful story. Two icons, one final chapter. The Rock finally defeated Austin on wrestling's biggest stage after failing to beat him in their previous WrestleMania encounters. Following the match, Austin quietly walked backstage. Few people watching understood the emotional significance of that moment. One of wrestling's greatest careers had just ended, without dramatic speeches, without lengthy farewells, without weeks of promotion. Simply another unforgettable performance from a man who always let his actions speak louder than words. Retirement from active competition didn't mean disappearing from WWE. Austin continued making occasional appearances as the special guest referee, authority figure, podcast host and interviewer. Every surprise return created massive excitement. Even years after retirement, hearing the sound of breaking glass still produced one of the loudest crowd reactions in wrestling. That level of popularity rarely fades. In 2009, Stone Cold Steve Austin received one of wrestling's highest honors when he entered the WWE Hall of Fame. The induction celebrated not only championships and victories, but also his enormous impact on the business itself. Many experts believe no superstar better represented the Attitude Era. His influence extended beyond wrestling. Television shows referenced him. Movies mentioned him. Professional athletes copied his celebrations. Celebrities proudly wore Austin 316 shirts. Even people who had never watched a wrestling match recognized his image. Few performers in sports entertainment have ever crossed into mainstream culture the way Steve Austin did. Outside WWE, Austin explored new opportunities. He appeared in action films. He hosted television programs. He launched one of wrestling's most successful interview podcasts, where his honest conversations with fellow performers earned praise from fans and industry veterans alike. Listeners appreciated the same quality that made him famous decades earlier: authenticity. Steve Austin never tried to sound perfect. He simply spoke his mind. Then, in 2022, something happened that many believed was impossible. Nearly 19 years after his retirement match, WWE announced that Stone Cold Steve Austin would compete once again at WrestleMania. Fans were skeptical. Could someone who had been retired for almost 2 decades still perform? Would it simply be a short appearance? The answer surprised everyone. Facing Kevin Owens in an intense, no-holds-barred contest, Austin proved he still possessed the toughness and charisma that had defined his legendary career. The crowd inside the stadium erupted with every punch, every stunner, and every moment of classic Stone Cold energy. When Austin celebrated afterward with his trademark beer, it felt as though time had stood still. For one unforgettable night, an entire generation relived the magic of the Attitude Era. Younger fans finally experienced what older audiences had been talking about for years. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was proof that true legends never lose their connection with the audience. Today, when conversations begin about the greatest WWE superstars of all time, Stone Cold, Steve Austin's name is always near the very top. His accomplishments speak for themselves. Multiple world championships, Royal Rumble victories, countless sold-out arenas, record-breaking merchandise sales, classic rivalries, legendary promos, and moments that continue to be replayed decades later. But perhaps his greatest achievement wasn't winning championships. It was changing the relationship between wrestling and its fans. Before Austin, many heroes followed predictable rules. They smiled, they respected authority, they always tried to do the right thing. Stone Cold shattered that formula. He showed that audiences could connect with someone who was flawed, stubborn, rebellious, and completely unapologetic. He wasn't perfect. He lost his temper. He made mistakes. He crossed lines. Yet those imperfections made him feel real. That authenticity transformed him into an icon. Even today's biggest WWE stars continue borrowing elements of the character Austin helped create. The fearless attitude, the confidence, the willingness to challenge authority, the belief that one unforgettable personality can change an entire industry. Very few performers can truly claim they changed wrestling forever. Stone Cold. Steve Austin unquestionably belongs on that list. His career wasn't built on luck. It wasn't handed to him by management. It wasn't guaranteed from the beginning. He survived rejection. He overcame injuries. He turned failure into motivation. He transformed criticism into confidence. And he proved that sometimes the biggest rebel becomes the biggest legend of them all. Thank you for watching this incredible journey with us on Ring Insights. If you enjoyed learning the untold story behind one of WWE's greatest icons, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Ring Insights, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into the unforgettable legends, rivalries, and moments that shape professional wrestling. Until next time, keep your passion for wrestling alive, and we'll see you in the next video.